Is Marvel getting ready to clean house? Well, we're going to talk about that and more on today's episode of the Geek Watch podcast.
This is the Geek Watch podcast with Brian Hatcher and Mandy Petrie.
Greetings, Geek Watchers, and welcome to episode 183 of the Geek Watch podcast. I'm Brian Hatcher, and with me as always, Geek Watch's own resident geek goddess, Mandy Petrie.
Hello, Brian.
We're back.
We are back.
Once again, I had to spend a little bit of time recuperating because I got the stomach flu last Thursday and was completely laid out. And so I decided instead of doing the podcast, I would just lie in bed and wish I was dying.
Did you go to a drip party?
I wish that was a thing I could have done. I'll tell you what.
Hydrate.
Because I couldn't even drink water. It was like you were in a constant state of nausea. I tried to drink water and I would get sick and it would come back up. It was horrible. And I've been taking potassium supplements over the last few days because I've had to try to get my potassium back up because I was so horribly dehydrated. But we are back and there's a bunch of stuff to talk about. We're definitely going to go into and some things, of course, over the course of not being able to record. Some other things have happened that we can definitely talk about. But we'll just start off with Marvel because there's a ton of stuff going on there.
Yeah, we get to talk about Marvel the way we talk about DC.
Yeah, I would say so. It's like, are we about ready to lose our Kang the Conqueror? Because they haven't really said a whole lot about that situation. And I'm a little worried to even go into it because we're getting a lot of the he said, she said.
Right.
As the whole deal with John Majors, of course, was arrested for domestic violence. And they're looking into it. I don't know if this is going to turn into an Ezra Miller kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm hoping not. But until we know what in the heck is going on, everybody's got their side of the story for sure. So hopefully the truth comes out, whatever the truth is, and we can certainly deal with that whenever that happens. But of course, we've been talking about Bob Iger coming back to Disney and wanting to shake things up, and he's been doing that in a huge way, including a bunch of layoffs, like lots and lots of layoffs. Now, the two specific ones that I want to talk about that were a real surprise to me. One of them was the president of Marvel's special effects, animation, post-production. She got laid off, fired.
Wow.
And that was a shock.
Yeah.
Because it was a complete shock to her. She didn't see it coming. And that was a big issue because, after all, that's a huge part of Marvel.
Now, are we talking about the What If animation, or are we talking about special effects in the live action movies?
All of it.
Wow.
We're talking about, this was the president of all of that stuff. And why this happened, again, we're in the situation of he said, she said. There's not been an official statement from Disney about why this is. But, of course, you may recall, and we've talked about this before on the show, is that there have always been these complaints about Marvel dealing with VFX teams and how they're really tyrannical about getting this stuff done. And there was always this thing with VFX studios saying that Marvel was this horrible taskmaster, that it was a very stressful environment. It was toxic to some degree. And so I guess they're thinking she was responsible for that.
Okay.
So that may be part of it now. She came out either yesterday or today and is saying that she had been working on some other projects and that Disney didn't like it, so they decided to, quote, unquote, silence her about it. And so this was them taking a shot at her. And who can say? But that wasn't the one that shocked me, strangely enough.
Okay.
Ike Perlmutter, who was the president of Marvel Entertainment, who was the person who sold Marvel to Disney.
Right.
And we've talked about him because he was the one who, for a long time, was in charge of Marvel Television. And he and Kevin Feige were co-heads, but they didn't really work together, even though they had this shared universe. And we talked about how Ike had a lot of influence even on Kevin Feige at one point, and he was the bean counter. He was the one who counted how many Cokes were on set and things like that. And we talked about that on the podcast, and he had been losing pull, and that Kevin Feige was taking more and more authority and not having to answer to him.
Okay.
Well, now Ike's been shown the road. He has been fired.
This feels so Richard III to me. All the people who got him on the throne, and now he's getting rid of them. At least he's not killing them.
A lot of this had to do with Bob Chapek, but also the things we've been saying about Perlmutter is this idea that you have to let the creatives do what the creatives are going to do and don't sit there and micromanage them. And apparently Chapek was really bad for it. Perlmutter was very bad for it. It has been for a long time. And I guess Bob Iger has been checking the tea leaves and going, we need to right the ship. Because you look at, say, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, that is not doing well at all and probably isn't going to. And there's been a lot of this talk about how it may not make its money back.
Ugh. Oh.
And this is part of a whole bunch of different things that are going on, both with Marvel and DC. But, we talked about before how Marvel's cutting back on a lot of stuff. And they're slowing things down and not putting as much stuff out, which makes sense.
1 or 2 big things a year, and then we might get...
And maybe a television thing or two.
Television.
But they're bringing up, we're still getting news about new things that are coming out because they talked about the Vision Quest TV show. We have been seeing some pictures from the new Captain America movie, Captain America New World Order, which apparently it's part Captain America, part Incredible Hulk 2. Because Liv Tyler is coming back as Betty Ross.
Okay.
And we will be getting the leader, which was hinted at in the first Hulk movie. The scientist who was trying to cure Bruce Banner and absorbed all this gamma radiation, his head started to swell up. That was a hint that, he's going to be the one that's going to turn into the leader. He's a Hulk-like character, except instead of having nearly unlimited strength, he has nearly unlimited intellect.
Okay.
So he
hulks out his brain.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we're going to have that. And then, of course, there have been pictures of Harrison Ford, who's taking over as Thunderbolt Ross. And so there's been all this talk about that we might get Red Hulk. So it looks like Captain America New World Order. It's part Captain America, part Hulk 2. And they've hinted a little bit about Vision Quest, so it'll be interesting to see what they do with that, following the exploits of the Ghost Vision, the White Vision.
Right, the White Vision, yeah.
And figuring out who he actually is. So all the stuff that's starting to happen now with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, with a little bit of unease there because it looks like this may be one of the lowest earning Marvel movies of all time. And that's saying something. And not because it was a bad movie. I enjoyed it. It certainly didn't feel very much like a Ant-Man and the Wasp movie.
Okay.
So that was a problem. It was different. But again, I feel like you should be able to experiment a little bit. But yeah, there were some things about the third movie that it felt like it was a break from what you expect from that kind of a movie. And that's fine.
Go against the formula?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit, I will definitely say.
Okay.
But Marvel's a little bit nervous because this huge cash cow, they need to keep it going. But figuring out how to make it profitable, and that's definitely what Bob Iger wants to do. He doesn't want to have Marvel Studios depending on getting revenue from the theme parks. He wants Marvel to make its own money.
Okay.
And for the longest time, it had been.
Yeah.
We've been hearing about Deadpool 3 and all that. And it seems like the rumors are the TVA are going to be heavy into this movie.
Okay.
Have you seen Deadpool 2?
Oh, have I? Yes, I have. I had to think about that for a second.
Well,
yeah, Domino right, yes.
Exactly. Now, you do remember how it ended, which was how Deadpool had the device that allowed him to be
in and out of time, go shoot Ryan Reynolds in the head. Yep.
Yeah. Apparently the TVA didn't appreciate that. And so apparently they're going to get involved.
Okay.
So that may be the motivation for a lot of what happens in the movie.
All right.
We
love them, yeah.
I'm down for that. That's
Mobius and Loki in on it.
Yeah. I think that's that's going to be amazing. So I'm definitely looking forward to
Miss
that.
Minute pop up and talk to.
Yeah, they've already mentioned that Miss Minutes is going to be a big part of Deadpool 3. So I think that's wonderful. Now, on the DC side of things, and we will talk a little bit about Shazam because I did see it.
Oh.
And so I am going to talk about Shazam, but it's not doing well either.
Boo.
And there's been a lot of talk about why that is. Because, again, that movie does go away from what you were used to from the first one. And I'll get more into detail when I give my review of the movie. But in between that, and a lot of people said that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson sabotaged the movie because he didn't do any kind of a cameo for it. He wanted Black Adam to be separate from Shazam, and I get that. In wrestling parlance, he went into business for himself. And so he didn't want to associate with Zachary Levi's Shazam. He wanted to fight Superman. He wanted to make that world the world that he played around in, which is going to be difficult to do when you're basically a character in this other world, but he didn't want to have anything to do with it. And Black Adam didn't do very well, but we also didn't get any kind of a after credit cameo from Black Adam. And so those worlds never, it was like two different things. It's almost to a point, if it wasn't for the fact that you got the Superman cameo at the end, at the post credit scene,
Right.
you wouldn't even have felt like this was a movie within that DC universe.
Okay.
And it only feels that way because we got Waller and we got Superman. But I think that's about the end for Black Adam. We're not going to see another one of those movies. And this will, of course, go back into when I started talking about the review. But there was a hint at the end in one of the post-credit scenes for Shazam that it could carry on to the new world. We'll see what happens. But before we get into that review, I did want to talk to you about a little bit of television because you did finish The Last of Us.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get your opinion on it, how you felt about it.
I don't know how to describe absolute devastation and joy at the same time as was the last scene of season 1 of Last of Us. Just very few words there at the final end, and you were just so happy and so excited and yet so devastated at the same time. And it really set up and makes you like, there's no way I can't come back for season 2. I've got to see what happens. And it was powerful. It was so in your face, and I can't describe it. It's such good TV. Such good TV.
Yeah, I talked to a friend of the show, Kevin Pauly, and he seemed to enjoy a good amount of it. He did say that toward the end, the slog to misery that it became, he said, was a little bit overwhelming to him.
Yep, I can see that.
And it became rough to watch. And he said he would have preferred that they would have had at least some relief. And I can get that. There's a point where if you start playing the same note over and over again, it can become...
It's just noise.
It becomes tedious. It can become tedious. And I get that. But no one's really complained about the writing. Certainly the special effects have been amazing. I am looking forward to cracking into it. But Pedro Pascal is slowly becoming a geek icon because, of course, you have that and you have The Mandalorian. And I haven't had a chance to crack into The Mandalorian either.
I've seen the first episode. That's it. But yeah, he's become very meme-worthy. And something, I don't think this gives any spoilers, but the actress that did the mocap and the voice for Ellie in the video game had a guest spot in the season finale. So that's something very interesting to look for.
Oh, that's cool. But, there's this meme that I keep seeing on Facebook. It's like, if your girl is, if your girl is watching Pedro Pascal, watching all the episodes of The Last of Us just to change the channel and watch The Mandalorian, she's not your girl. That's not your girl. That's Pedro Pascal's girl.
I think scientists have calculated that by the year 2050, all TV shows will be Pedro Pascal rescuing a magical child.
He's a good chaperone. So... Pedro Pascal, the geek chaperone. Yeah. That is his role. But, we're getting closer and closer to a lot of stuff that's coming up in the near future. Of course, this weekend is Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, yes. Honor Among Thieves.
Yeah, so here's the question.
Yeah.
Is this the movie that is going to cause you to overcome your xenophobia?
And try to get out to the theater? Probably.
This could be
Yes,
it.
I saw a great interview with Hugh Grant, and they're asking him if he's ever played the game, and he's like, Chris Pine tried to get me to. We don't hang out with each other anymore. And he talked about on movie sets.
Right.
Because of phones, people don't hang out on movie sets anymore. They don't get to know each other like they used to. That's something he brought up. But he said, I'm told I'm a rogue, which is hilarious. To we who have played it, and I believe it was Stephen Colbert interviewing him, and he was a big Dungeons and Dragons player, and he said, I'm told I'm a rogue, and that's very interesting. I'm excited, and seeing Chris Pine walking around with a violin or something on his back, so a lute or something, so definitely he's the bard.
Yeah, he's definitely a bard in this one. And, of course, we get some classic characters, the gelatinous cube.
Gotta have the gelatinous cube.
There's some deep cuts, displacer beasts.
We better have magic missiles.
Mimics.
Oh, mimics, yes.
All of those little classic monsters that we dealt with when we had the red box and the cheap plastic dice with the crayon and the old school stuff that I remember. And so it's going to be a great throwback. I'm definitely going to try to catch it this weekend. Unfortunately, it's probably going to mean that any chance that Shazam had to maybe make some money this weekend, it's probably not going to. But let's talk about Shazam. Fury of the Gods.
Yes.
I'm going to lean away from spoilers, even though from what I understand, they're probably going to wind up putting it on HBO Max pretty quickly. A lot sooner than they intended because it didn't really do all that well. And I can see why, because again, a lot of the stuff that we loved in the first one, we didn't get a whole lot of it in the second. We didn't get a great deal of Billy Batson in this one. So the actor who played Billy Batson, he got a really nice paycheck for not having to do an awful lot of work.
Hey, good for him.
But you don't see him an awful lot. You see the Shazam family more than you see the kids.
I feel like that takes away the heart.
Yes, I think so too. And I think another problem that wasn't egregious in the first one. It became a little more egregious in the second one, which was that Zachary Levi played things a little more for laughs instead of basically playing young.
Right.
He basically, to show that he wasn't like a full-grown adult, he played goofy, but certainly more than the actor who played Billy Batson played it. And you could get away with it to some degree in the first movie because this young kid just gets powers.
Right.
And so, yeah, he's going to act crazy. But I would have liked to have seen Zachary Levi maybe play that down a little bit and not go full bore, just weird and goofy. Maybe tone it down a little bit. And that was something they even referenced in the movie because in the movie they learn what Shazam means, the breakdown of the gods. And the point was made, it's what happened to the wisdom of Solomon or Solanum, which is how he pronounced it. You didn't seem to get that power. Which is a good question. It's like, how come? I will say that even though we don't get a lot of the kids, we get some of them. And certainly as terrible things happen in the movie, and this really isn't that much of a spoiler because you see it in the trailer, but the kids start losing their powers. They start getting their powers taken away from them. So you start to see them a little bit more, but the concentration is more on Shazam and his family and not on Billy Batson or the kids. So yeah, you lose a little bit of that heart. The one thing about the movie that really disappointed me was toward the end, and this wasn't the part that disappointed me, but toward the end, they made a really interesting storytelling choice that I was like, holy cow, they're going to go here? Wow, that's amazing. That's a really daring thing. And I could see that being polarizing because I don't think everyone's going to like it. But I'm like, that is a really daring choice. I mean, unless they Deus Ex Machina and just change it back.
Right.
Which is exactly what they did.
Oh.
And as Fury of the Gods, yes, it was a literal Deus Ex Machina. So they had this really powerful emotional moment. And I remember in the theater, I'm like, wow, and I was even saying this to myself. I'm like, this is a really daring stunt. I'm surprised they're going to do this in this movie. They're not going to reverse it because if you Deus Ex Machina, it's going to suck.
Yeah.
And they did. They literally Deus Ex Machina'd and just basically cut the legs out from under this really powerful scene and then just basically undercut the whole thing by going, psych, no, we're not going to do that.
Nullified the sacrifice kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly what
See, as you're talking about it, in my head, I've been comparing it to Thor, Love and Thunder. Oh, I want more of the kids. That's what I wanted from Thor, Love and Thunder. I want more of the kids. And then at the end, there's the sacrifice and all but the gods. And man.
Yeah. Now, I will say that if you were going to Deus Ex Machina something, this was the way to do it.
Okay.
Because you get something exciting. Except if you'd been watching the trailers, that spoiled the whole thing. I have a philosophy whenever I'm going to go see a movie that like a month before the movie comes out, I don't watch any trailers.
No reviews, no.
I don't do reviews. I don't do trailers because very often, especially if they start getting a little bit nervous, they'll spoil too much of it. They'll put too much in the trailer. And there's this great cameo that happens at the end that was spoiled in the trailer, and they should have never told anybody about it. It wasn't spoiled for me because I didn't watch that trailer.
Okay.
But I still saw some things coming because the moment I knew they were going to Deus Ex Machina this thing, I'm like, oh, this would probably be, if they could pull it off, using a cameo, this type of a cameo. And that's exactly what they did. I was like, yeah. Here's the thing, like I said, if they hadn't undercut the ending completely, I would have thought the ending would have been stronger. It would have been more emotional. It would have been a powerful way to end the thing. But at the same time, I could see where some people would be like, dude, how could you end it like that? How could you? And I could get why some people wouldn't particularly like it. But then, again, they just undercut it. So now it went from being a possibly polarizing but very emotionally powerful ending to being nothing at all.
Oh.
And that kind of sucked.
Yeah.
And found that kind of disappointing. But at the same time, the movie certainly wasn't as bad as some people have made it out to be. There was a lot of great stuff in there. I enjoyed it. It didn't really have that strong of a villain. I'll say that. The antagonist aspect to the movie felt like a threat, but not like a huge one. I never felt that there was a moment where, oh, they're not going to win until they got toward the end. And I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing. And would have saved the movie if they had let it stand, in my mind. But again, it's not doing that well right now. And I'm wondering if this is going to be the last of Shazam. Because, again, Black Adam tanked. Shazam Fury of the Gods isn't doing very well. There's certainly nothing that we know so far from James Gunn that says they're going to bring that character back, although there is a post-credit scene. There was 2 post-credit scenes. One of them just really made me angry.
Oh, no.
I don't want to go into it, but it was like, it was something that they'd kind of promised us in the first one. And they basically do a post-credit scene to go, yeah, we're not going to ever give that to you. And basically rubbed it in your face of, yeah, wouldn't that have been cool if we'd have done that? We're not doing that.
No.
And we just want to give you this post-credit scene to let you know we're never going to do this. So screw you. And then the second post-credit scene was the one that made you think that, okay, maybe James Gunn might bring in Shazam. Because we see a couple of characters from Peacemaker.
Really?
Yes. To recruit him into the Justice Society.
Okay.
So there's that possibility. They kind of left it open that could happen. So maybe we do get some more Zachary Levi as Shazam. Probably never going to see Black Adam again. Or at least if they do, they're going to recast him. I have a feeling. I don't know. I think that Warner Brothers and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, I think that their relationship is over at this point. You know, never say never. Maybe they can work it together again. It's a possibility.
Yep.
But As of right now, I have a feeling that Shazam is going to be on the back burner. It's not going to be
priority.
It's definitely not going to be a priority. Most of what they're going to be doing is trying to set up all these things that we, of course, that they talked about already. Mm-hmm. And like I said, looking at the slate that they're planning on doing that they've announced, James Gunn has basically said there's more going on that he just hasn't talked about yet.
Okay.
But it'll be interesting to see what happens, because some of the stuff, and we've talked about it before, some of it I'm like, well, that sounds interesting. And some of it is, I'm not so sure that can work. But we are talking about James Gunn. And Guardians of the Galaxy shouldn't work. Unless you read the comics, mm-hmm. you didn't know who any of those characters were.
No idea.
And one of them's a talking tree, and one of them's a talking raccoon. Uh-huh. But James Gunn made it work. So even though, like I said, there's some weird deep cuts, how is this going to work? If it was somebody else, I'd be like, this is never going to work. But it's James Gunn, and I'm going to have to give him the benefit of the doubt. Again, and we've talked about this before, assuming that Warner Brothers doesn't try to micromanage him, and he's allowed to do what he does best. And I think not just with his success with Marvel, but with the Suicide Squad, even though it didn't do very well at all, people still love this movie. But of course, that was during the COVID disaster, and it got posted on HBO Max, and so it wasn't going to make a whole lot of money because people were watching it for free, right, including me. Mm-hmm. But Peacemaker did so well, and it was so popular. And
such good TV.
Yeah, and Warner Brothers certainly saw enough in him to go, hey, we're going to make you the president, and we're going to make you the showrunner. We're going to make you at least half of a Kevin Feige for us. Let you figure all of this stuff out. We'll let you drive the bus for a while. Now, if they allow him to do that, we may get some really interesting things out of it. Mm-hmm. Assuming they don't chicken out and grab the wheel away from him. Yeah. Because the minute they do that, I think we're in a world of hurt. Because I do have faith in James Gunn. Yep. I don't have a heck of a lot of faith in Warner Brothers.
Yep.
Because they have, they haven't done all that well. But we've got Guardians of the Galaxy 3 that's going to be coming up, and that's going to be, again, it's not a Warner Brothers project, obviously, but I think that if it does well, not only does it help turn Marvel around, because their track record hasn't been stellar over the last few, but if it's able to turn some things around, that gives James Gunn a bit of, certainly in Warner Brothers, because they're like, okay, we know he can do it. He just did it again for our competition. Let's let him right the ship here. That's going to be the question. Are they going to allow him full reign to do what he needs to do? Is he going to do what Disney has decided at this point that they need to get back to doing, which is let the creatives be the creatives. We'll figure out how to pay for it, but we let them be the dreamers of the dreams and create this stuff that people love, and not try to micromanage it and count how many Coke cans are on a set or whatever, that there's more important things to worry about, which is creating great movies and television that people love. Is Warner Brothers going to do that for James Gunn? Well, they say they are, but I guess we'll find out. I guess we'll see.
We shall see.
And with that said, we come to the end of episode 183. Thank you for listening, and tune in next time for the latest in geek news and views with the Geek Watch podcast. For Mandy Petrie, this is Brian Hatcher, reminding all the Geek Watchers out there, we're all geeky about something. Be proud of yours. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Geek Watch podcast. If you enjoyed this program, don't forget to like and subscribe on your preferred platform, and share this podcast on your social media. For links to all the ways you can listen to the Geek Watch podcast, as well as leave comments and suggestions, visit our website at geekwatch.net. The Geek Watch podcast is a Hanging J production.